So this video will have skills 3 and 4 for standard 18. So standard 18 is still in that slope-intercept form and we're graphing. So on the first skill, we took an equation and we found what is our slope and what is our y-intercept. So I'm going to do that again. So slope is the number with the x. That's going to be our 2. And we're going to write it as 2 over 1 so that we know how much to rise and how much to run. Then the number without the x, that's going to be our b value, so -3. And before we go ahead and put this on the graph, let's practice that just one more time. So the second graph here, the b, we're going to find what is our slope and what is our y-intercept. So our slope, again, is the number with the x. Sometimes it's a fraction and sometimes it's not, but we're going to always write it as a fraction. And our b value is the number that does not have an x on it. So now we're going to talk about how to put these two things on the graph. So b stands for our y-intercept. This is the y-intercept, which is where our line is going to cross over this y line. So that our line is going to cross over there at -3. So I'm going to go to this -3 dot right here and put a dot. That'll be the first dot of my graph. Then from there, I'm going to use the slope as like driving directions. So it's telling me to drive up 2 blocks and right 1 block. And I'll put a dot there. Now just to make sure that my line is straight and doesn't go all wonky, I can do that slope a couple of times. So I can get a nice straight line. There it is. Okay, let's try that again. This b value, that is our y-intercept, that is where our graph crosses the y-axis. So this y-axis, we're going to go to the number 2, which doesn't have a number on it. It'll be right here. And then from there, I'm going to rise 1, which means go up 1, and I'm going to go to the right 5. So I'll rise, and I'll go to the right. So I went up 1, I stopped there, and then I start recounting again. So that's 1. Now restart over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't go more than once here, which is totally fine. There we go. Let's keep practicing that, going down to the next group here, C and D. With C, we're going to change this up a little bit here. Apologies for the question being off the graph. So let's just change this up. There's a little bit of a mistake here. So we're going to make this, instead of a +9, we're going to make that a +4. And then we're going to change these numbers to 1. This will be 2, 3, 4 doesn't have a number on it, and then 5. Otherwise, we'd have to count by 2 on the graph, which makes it super confusing. So 1, this will be 2, 3, that'll be 4, and 5. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start at 4. So my M and my B. My b value, I had to change that up there. Apologies for that again. My b value is going to be 4. Now my m, it's been a little bit since we've done this. Our m is just a negative sign. Well, that's actually going to be -1, meaning I'm going to go down 1. And then I'm just going to make that into a fraction so I know how far to go to the right. All right, so my first dot right here, this y-intercept, that's going to have my first dot, 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. right on that y line. And then I'm going to rise and then go to the right. Now when you rise by a negative number, that means you're going to go down. So I'm going to go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. There we go. You're going to see another little tricky one here on letter D. Letter D's slope is this negative 2 over 3. And the B value doesn't seem to be there. There's nothing there back on the back side of that. If there's nothing there, it means that no amount was added on to this equation. So it would be a plus 0. When we start at 0, 0 is right here in the middle of the graph. Okay, so my negative, this is the tricky part, the negative sign, I am always going to give the negative sign to the top number. So really, this is going to go down 2, and I'm still going to go to the right 3. So I'll go down 2, and then to the right 1, 2, 3. There will be my second dot. So again, let's count that. Down 2, stop, restart the numbering, to the right 1, 2, 3. I can do that again. Down 2, right 1, 2, 3. Okay, this will be our last group just so we have enough time in the video to do both skill 3 and skill 4. This group of 2 here, the slope numbers are whole numbers, so we just want to talk about that. So my M is 5 and my B is 4. Now just make sure we put an over 1, make it a fraction so we know for sure we have to go to the right 1. Let's write that out for this one as well. Okay, so here's where it gets to be a little sticky. I said you always have to go to the right. You always rise and then you go to the right. Well, sometimes we didn't give you a graph that is big enough to fit a rise into the right. So let's start at 4. Now, if I were to rise, I'm just going to estimate where this would be. So let's count 5. 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, and then right 1 would be somewhere over here. Okay, so we went up and to the right. Now, that's not exactly right, and it's not on the graph, so that doesn't really count. So instead of going up and to the right, I can do the exact opposite of that and still find another dot on the graph over here. So the opposite of up and to the right is down and to the left. So in some cases that will happen. It doesn't happen very often, but I wanted to make sure you saw it. Same thing's going to happen over here on the letter F. We'll start at -2. And it wants us to go down 3 and over 1. Now we can get pretty close on this one. So down 3 is 1, 2, 3. To the right 1 would be approximately somewhere, maybe right there. But it's not really good to plot off the graph. So instead of going down and to the right, let's try going up and to the left. So up 3, left 1. And then I know for sure that that is what my line would look like. Okay? You can pause the video right here and then go ahead and do problems on page 20 for practice. So page 20 for classwork questions. So I've turned to page 21, and this is skill 4. Skill 4 is figuring out slope and y-intercept when you're given the equation in standard form. So you actually cannot see the slope and you cannot see the y-intercept from its current state. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some rearranging so that we can see the slope and we can see the y-intercept. Now, in order to do that, this letter y has to be all by itself. Okay, so this 2x over here is kind of in the wrong spot. So we want it to look like y equals mx plus b, and then we're going to know for sure that m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. Okay, so to make that happen, I have to get rid of a positive 2x. The opposite of a positive 2x is a minus 2x. Now there's a really strong temptation to go -6 minus 2, which is -8. But we're not actually going to add those together. They're not like terms. So all I'm going to do, bring down my y, and I'm going to write these two numbers next to each other. -2x and a -6. From this form, I can see my slope is -2 and my b value is a -6. So my slope is -2 and my b value is -6. Now that seemed too easy. Well, you're right, it's definitely too easy. So we have to kind of kick it up a notch. So the next two questions will be a little bit harder, but not too terrible. We are always going to start with getting rid of this x piece. So if it is a positive 3x, we're always going to do minus 3x. We're just moving it over to the other side, but keeping it balanced by doing the opposite. The reason this one changes is when I bring down this y, it's not y, it's actually -1y. So when I bring that down, -1y, and then write these two numbers next to each other, and that's a +1. And I'm not finished yet. So on the last problem, I was finished, I was done, I didn't have to do anything else. But on this problem, I still have to get rid of the -1 that's being multiplied by y. The opposite of multiply is divide. When I divide everything by -1, -3 divided by -1, type that into my calculator, that's 3. And then +1 divided by -1 is -1. In this form, I see my m and my b. So m equals 3 and b equals -1. We'll do one last question, and then you can work on page 22. Again, we're going to subtract the x part. That'll be your first step every single time. Get that x piece on the other side. Bring down the part that's with the y, 2y. Write these two pieces next to each other. Okay, I still have to get rid of the 2 that's with my y, so that's where I added that step on problem B by dividing. So we're not always dividing by -1, we're not always dividing by 2, it's whatever number is attached to y, we're going to get rid of that. So we'll divide by 2, and these just happen to come out nice and pretty for us. If they don't, we're going to leave them as fractions. -8 divided by 2 just happens to come out as -4. If it didn't come out, I would leave it as a fraction. 6 divided by 2 is 3. From here, I can tell you what my m is, and back here at the back, I can tell you what my b is. Okay, that concludes skill 3 and 4 of standard 18. Turn the page to page 22 to get some practice.